How many discounts does USAA Auto Insurance offer? Too many to say here. Multi-vehicle discount, safe driver discount, new vehicle discount, storage discount, legacy.
How many discounts will you stack up? Visit USAA.com/auto discounts. Restrictions apply.
Whatever the occasion, effortless elegance is right this way. Because Hilton brings you new ways to stay courtesy of the Nomad London. And it doesn't stop at award-winning dining in a space draped in velvet and illuminated by vintage chandeliers. No, this day goes beyond with unparalleled personalized service and attentive hospitality. Oh, and did we mention the Nomad London can be booked using your Hilton Honors points at Hilton.com? Hilton, for the stay.
Welcome to NatureBacked podcast. Today my guest is Boyan Slat from the Ocean Cleanup. Boyan, what is the Ocean Cleanup?
So the Ocean Cleanup is a global non-profit with the mission to rid the world's oceans of plastic. So we do essentially two things. We stop more plastic from going into the ocean, and we clean up the plastic that's already in the ocean. And essentially through years of research and development, we got to the point that we now have the solutions, the technologies that can do that. And now we're working on scaling this up with the goal of ridding the oceans of plastic and putting ourselves out of business in the next 10, 15 years.
It's a great mission to put yourself out of business.
Yeah, I think more, it's surprising how few, actually if any nonprofits kind of state that goal explicitly, right? Like we should not exist. And if we succeed in our goal, like we shouldn't be necessary anymore. It's somehow I think it's important to keep that in mind, right? Because otherwise, sometimes I think with some nonprofits that the mere existence kind of becomes the goal. And I think generally nonprofits, if you compare them to for-profits, it's much harder to succeed with nonprofits. So it's much harder to have like real breakout successes because you don't have the wind of capitalism in your sails. But it's also much harder to fail. So there are just so many nonprofits just peter along. They still get funding, but it's not like startups that sort of die and shut down continuously. I think more, it's more nonprofits should probably ultimately shut down.
Shut down. Yeah. So if they are not really
not working. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. The interesting comparison. Just in a previous episode, we had Ecosia, who has who's a for-profit company, but all the profit is reinvested back to the nature, which is basically like an NGO, right?
If all of the profit, then it's technically not for profit. I guess.
I was also challenging that in the episode. Exactly. But
is it all their profit, or
that's what they claimed? I don't know exactly, but it sounds a little bit the same logic as for the Ocean Cleanup. I've been listening. We're recording this episode at Sidelines of Latitude 59 conference in Tallinn. I've listened to you on 2 occasions today, and a lot of talk has been about how young people launch initiatives. Mm-hmm. I mean, you were 18 launching the mission to clean the world's oceans from plastic. What did your parents say?
I think generally I've just been very fortunate that they've been basically very supportive, like throughout my life. So when I was a child, when I would be having some deep obsession or interest in a certain topic, my mom would make sure that she would, for Christmas or something, she would give me books about that topic, or she allowed me to use the living room as my workshop all the time and my laboratory. Just giving me the space to explore my passions. I think that was great. And I also, when I told her, I decided I'm going to drop out of university. yeah, she supported me with that too. So yeah, quite grateful for that.
Quite amazing. I mean, as a parent, I would expect that I would question that seriously. Especially if it's like on a small mission of cleaning the world's oceans, or it sounds almost worse than joining a rock band.
Yeah, I mean it has different perks maybe, but obviously she asks a few questions, but then it's like, okay, you thought about this. It never really felt like such a big or risky decision. I always thought, okay, if it doesn't work out, it's like an experiment. If it doesn't work out, I can always come back after half a year. Actually, I tried to convince the dean of aerospace at my university whether I could kind of stay enrolled and all that, and he said no, and I guess happy he didn't allow it, because then I really was fully committed, right? It wasn't like I had like one leg in both in two different paths. But yeah, it just never felt super risky.
But aerospace, aerospace, basically space, right? Or space technologies to ocean cleanup. That sounds, maybe they're closer than one would think at the first glance.
I think so, actually. We have quite a few people in our team who did
dropped out from aerospace.
Well, they actually finished.
Okay.
I'm happy not everyone drops out, because we need trained engineers as well to do this. But you need a few people who don't, I guess. But I think so. So the reason why, I never had this ambition to be an entrepreneur or to do this particular problem. I wanted to be an inventor, essentially. So I wanted to create technologies, invent new things. That was always the thing that I thought I wanted to do. And I figured, okay, aerospace engineering kind of has the reputation, at least in the Netherlands, for being the hardest engineering study. And it's just basically a good foundation for any sort of technical venture after that. So that's the reason I chose to do it. I didn't have the intention to go work for ESA or something like that. So even though I think rockets are super cool, and whenever Starship launches, I watch the live stream because I'm just a nerd in general, I think. But it wasn't that was sort of my intended career path or something.
Tell us, in maybe in not horribly detailed way, how technological is ocean cleanup? One would think that people go and clean up, plastic with plastic bags or something like that. But how much of the technology innovation is out there in the NGO?
Well, it would take a long time if you would do it by hand. I mean, it's a lot of trash. So it's when it comes to the Great Pacific Garbage Patch Challenge, that's always been very much a hard technology challenge. Firstly, in terms of having a cleanup system that can sweep a very large area, that can handle the different forces, and is as efficient as possible in collecting the plastic. So that was basically an 8-year journey before we got the system to work. And now it's still very much a hardcore engineering challenge there, because before we scale this to a whole fleet of systems, we see a big opportunity to increase the performance and thereby minimize the size of the fleet that's required to clean up this Great Pacific Garbage Patch. And that's really by using drones and a lot of advanced computer modeling to to target the hotspots, so the areas within the garbage patch with the highest concentrations of plastic. So we're currently working on developing that, and that can really dramatically reduce the duration and the cost of cleaning up the patch. So oceans cleaning up the garbage patch has been really a technical problem. I mean, you can't go out there with boats and little scoop nets with 1,000 people or something. It doesn't work. With rivers, so with the interceptors, technology is a key part of it. So you need to have systems that, again, can intercept the plastic effectively, even during extreme storms and all that, because that's when most plastic actually comes down these rivers. But the challenge there is much broader, and it's also much more what we refer to as the system around the system. So it's the ecosystem. It's basically you have to work with governments, permits, the local communities, the operator, the waste management sector. So it's many different parts that come together beyond just. You can have a great barrier in a river, but if it's not being operated well, or if the government doesn't allow you to do it, or if it's not sustainably funded, it's not going to be a success. So now that we're scaling rivers, the challenges are much broader than technology, but technology is definitely still part of the mix.
Looking at the plastics in general, then rivers, of course, becomes rather logical way to, or kind of the target to work on or work with.
Yeah.
But looking at the geography, how does Rotterdam is a major port town, and Holland is the major kind of seafaring country. Mm-hmm. But in general, rivers and the plastic waste problem is very far from Holland, isn't it?
Yeah. So Rotterdam, Netherlands, that's our HQ, and indeed, I think that has served us well so far in terms of having quite a big pool of good technical talent and maritime talent, and also I think people are quite socially minded generally, and it's not as expensive as the US. So I think that's kind of served as well. Most of the growth for the organization, so we're still recruiting in Rotterdam, but I think most of the growth will actually be in the regions, in the countries where we operate in, where all the standardization and kind of owning the technology portfolio and making sure those feedback loops end up in the process and in the solutions. That's all headquarter stuff. But then, I think most of the growth we're going to see to really make this scale is going to happen in Southeast Asia, in Central America, later on in Africa as well, as we roll out from 20 rivers now to 1,000 rivers in a few years, hopefully.
This episode is brought to you by Indeed. When your computer breaks, you don't wait for it to magically start working again. You fix the problem. So why wait to hire the people your company desperately needs? Use Indeed's sponsored jobs to hire top talent fast. And even better, you only pay for results. There's no need to wait. Speed up your hiring with a $75 sponsored job credit at Indeed.com/podcast. Terms and conditions apply.
Llegaron los nuevos McCrispy Strips, listos para aventurarse en la mezcla de mayo ketchup, la barbecue que quedó en el fondo de la cajita, Hot Fudge Sundae y en la nueva Creamy Chili McCrispy Strip Dip. Los nuevos McCrispy Strips, ahora en McDonald's. Para pa pa pa.
On the kind of the global scale, how far are you with that challenge? Now 12 years, 13 years into it, or
12, yeah.
12 years into it, you said that in 10 or 20 years, hopefully, there's no need for the company.
Yeah, so we really only started collecting plastic in 2021. That was the moment we got things to work. So it took a long time. We made many mistakes. I personally made many mistakes in that journey. So I think we probably could have gone there much faster, but ultimately it took 8 years to get everything to work. So it's been now 4 years that we've been operational, and we've been really scaling very rapidly now in terms of the impact. So we I think we increased the catch 8-fold 2023. Then we doubled it last year, or almost doubled it. I think this year I think it should be possible to more than double.
It's a lovely word, catch. When you talk about the sea and stuff collected from the sea, it's the catch, right?
Yeah, it's like we're fishing for plastic in a way. So it's and actually we just need 5 or 6 more doublings to get to clean oceans. So if we can keep this trend going of doubling every year, in 5 to 6 years we should be done. But of course, the reality is that you have
bigger you are, the more difficult it is to double it.
Yeah, exactly. So it become increasingly harder. You have this long tail. So we're now still reaping these low-hanging fruits. So I think 10 years should be doable. But next few years we're going to see just crazy growth. Yeah.
The ocean cleanup is basically the side of business is taking the plastics out of oceans, but the river side is that's not really ocean cleanup anymore, right? This is like stopping the plastic from the oceans.
Yeah, well, so it's sometimes people say, you're cleaning rivers. And actually, the fact that the rivers also get cleaner, it's kind of a side effect. We are in the rivers to clean the ocean. Right? So, because ultimately we're the ocean cleanup. So if there's a river that leads to a lake or something, that's not, we won't go there. So ultimately, actually, if you stop stuff from going in, most of the world's oceans will just be clean. Within a month, 80% of everything that's in coastal waters will have washed up once you stop putting new stuff in. So if you go scuba diving near Bali and see a lot of plastic, or if you are on a beach in say Panama and you see a lot of trash there, that stuff came from a river not too far away from you. So if you stop the rivers, then and then you do like a one-time proper beach clean, then that beach will stay clean forever.
The sample you guys are showing on the videos and talking about is often 2.5 kilometers ring to collect the plastic waste or the waste in general. But you have one device, or
so far we've
taking
been
it around the world, or
so for rivers, we're in 20 rivers, right? So that's many different systems. But for cleaning up the Great Pacific Garbage Patch, ultimately we're going to need a fleet, somewhere between 10-20 systems. So far we've been operating with one, because we first really want to perfect the technology before we scale, because operating ships is super expensive. So you don't want to increase the cost before you
no, it works as well as it could be working, right?
Indeed.
You know that feeling when someone shows up for you just when you need it most? That's what Uber is all about. Not just a ride or dinner at your door. It's how Uber helps you show up for the moments that matter. Because showing up can turn a tough day around, or make a good one even better. Whatever it is, big or small, Uber is on the way. So you can be on yours. Uber, on our way.
At Capella University, you can learn at your own pace with our FlexPath learning format. Take 1 or 2 courses at a time and complete as many as you can in a 12-week billing session. With FlexPath, you can even finish the bachelor's degree you started in 22 months for $20,000. A different future is closer than you think with Capella University. Learn more at capella.edu. Fastest 25% of students. Cost varies by pace, transfer credits, and other factors. Fees apply.
What's kind of, I mean, one is working, what's kind of the next challenge on is it the scaling to 10 or roughly 10? Or what's the kind of the big challenge on your table now?
So I mean, an ocean on the Great Pacific Garbage Patch is still very much getting the hotspot hunting technology working well. So being able to accurately target those highest densities of plastic in the Great Pacific Garbage Patch. But on rivers where it's just hardcore execution, is actually just scaling. So it's it's all about, okay, like we know how to solve a river, and if we look at one river, we can do that very well. But now, how do we do 1,000 rivers? Right. So it's building a factory of projects. How can we standardize? How can we set up? We need to set up the supply chain. We need to have, globalize the team. We need to secure more execution partners. But there's a lot of elements that have to come together now to. It's similar. Like it's very easy to start a car company, making prototypes or like hand building a few hundred cars or a few dozen cars a year. And there's many companies like that. But to build a new giant industrial company what Tesla did, that's actually very, very hard. So it's about, it's that the scale really changes the nature. So that's kind of the transition we have to go through now.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. As an NGO, where do you get the money from?
So we've been, I think, very blessed with a very strong support base from around the world, from people ranging from crowdfunding. So that's how we got started, and still just people donating through the website. It's been super valuable in what we do. So it's really the foundation of our support base. And then there are some high net worth individuals, like people like Mark Benioff from Salesforce or Joe Gebbia from Airbnb, who've contributed in a major way. And then we have companies now coming in. So, of course, philanthropy and donations, that's all it's basically like one-way traffic. Of course, people get they can be proud that they're part of the mission and all that, but it's still a donation. What we see now with these corporate partnerships actually makes business sense for them because there is value in being associated with the ocean cleanup. And so some of the world's biggest brands are currently in conversations with us to join the mission as well. So sometimes it's like, okay, we're going to. So there's a Western company that wants to enter a new market. They can actually, adopt a city and help clean it up. But I think it's a great way to launch a brand in a new country as well.
Absolutely.
So,
The plastic and plastic waste and regulations, probably a massive topic we could speak hours about. But is there some great international initiatives to kind of, ban plastic from getting into the waters, or is there some regulative way of doing this? From the face, I can see that not really.
Well, I don't know. I mean, there's attempts, right? I mean, there's some people who've tried to have some kind of global plastics tax. If plastic would be more expensive, there would be more of an incentive to collect it and recycle it. So it's not a bad idea, but it just hasn't really taken off. And then we have the Global Plastics Treaty at the UN that has been negotiated, but so far has not been a success either because countries can't agree what they need to do. I think the beauty with plastic pollution, though, is that I don't think you need a global intervention. The thing with something like climate change, the issue is that, like if I emit a ton of CO2 here in Estonia,
I think it affects everywhere.
It affects everyone, right? So you need global coordination. But the thing, if I emit a ton of plastic here as Estonia, like almost all of that plastic will end up on the coastlines of Estonia. So you actually have, on a national level, you have a selfish interest to tackle this. So, Indonesia is really fighting hard to try and do something about this, really because it affects their tourism, not because, they care about what happens on the other side of the world. It's just selfish interests that align. So, so I think that makes me really hopeful that this is a very tractable problem, really.
One question, I haven't gone deep into your homepage to read up. What happens to the plastic?
Yeah, so in the case of what we take out of the Great Pacific Garbage Patch, all of that gets recycled, and we provide that to our corporate partners to also use that into their products. So it's like a durable, sustainable product to tell the story of our collaboration. In the case of rivers, managing the catch is a bit more complicated because it's usually very polluted, can't be recycled. But we still have this ethos that our plastic should never end up back in the environment. So we of course we set up a chain to make sure that our plastic is actually responsibly managed, and we use the best available waste management solution that's available in the countries that we operate in.
Good.
Yeah.
Thank you, and good luck on your mission.
Well, thanks so much.
If you like the show, subscribe and leave a good rating on the podcast platform of your choice. It would mean a world to us.